all-new Knight Rider, Kitt and Michael are in the race of their lives.
Fast cars and rock and roll.
But a victory for Kitt could mean curtains for a beautiful reporter. Next.
Production 58627, The 19th Hole. This episode was written by Gerald Sanford and Robert Foster and directed by George Fenady. It originally aired on NBC Sunday night 8 p.m. on March 10th of 1985. It was filmed from October 15th through October 23rd of 1984. It was the 58th episode to air, but the 54th to be produced. The synopsis reads as follows. After receiving threatening letters ordering her to cancel a car race, Jamie Downs calls the foundation to help her find the ones who wrote the letter and ensure that the race is a success. Okay, let's unpack this episode, shall we? The opening scene takes place in the town of Marbury, the fictional town of Marbury at the Marbury Times. In reality, this is Covina, California. Now, we've seen Covina a few times in the series, right? We saw it as Alpine Crest in A Nice and Decent Little Town. And we also saw it in Season 2 in Silent Night. So you might be asking yourself, hey Joe, where's this building located? Specifically in Covina. Well, let's show you. It is the Covina Irrigating Company. At least currently, although I think it was back then too, because take a look at this. Look at this. Established 1882, okay? Then we go back to the screenshot. Look, established 1882. They just moved it from here down there. So I think this was that irrigating company even back in 1984. And is this the Volkswagen thing that Jamie's driving that we saw Michael and Stevie driving in Let It Be Me? Don't know for sure. You know, I was kind of looking because in Let It Be Me, that was yellow. The car was yellow. I was kind of looking for any yellow, flakes or anything under the blue. Couldn't see them. But knowing Knight Rider, knowing Universal, I'm willing to bet that's the same thing from Let It Be Me. So Jamie's driving with her flyers to get them reprinted. So they say Grand Prix, P-R-A-X and not P-R-E-E. Anyways, she's driving out here on this lone road, and perhaps a foreshadowing of what's going to happen. One of the flyers just happens to fly out of the car here minutes before she flips the Volkswagen, and all the flyers fly out. So perhaps this road looks a little familiar to you. Maybe? Does it? It should. This is the exact same spot where we see a driverless Kitt under the control of Randy Merritt jump over the Rodent Raiders van and Adrienne Margot in Soul Survivor. And here's the flip I was talking about earlier. And take a look at this. There's a Jeep parked down here conveniently that stops the rolling of this Volkswagen. There's a bunch of hay bales pushed up against the Jeep, and then it comes to rest and knocks the side of the Jeep. Clearly, the Jeep was put there specifically to stop the roll of this Volkswagen. Interestingly, this appears to be one of the Knight Rider crew vehicles. We have some pictures of a lot of the crew driving a Jeep with this kind of tongue, I guess you could say, on the front. The Jeep, the Knight Rider crew Jeep, actually says Knight Rider across the side of the hood. Don't know if this is the same one, but it sure looks like it with that writing gone. So maybe its usefulness had expired and they just decided to destroy it, because clearly this Jeep lands on this. I'm sorry, the Volkswagen lands on the Jeep, so pretty sure it was fatally wounded in this scene. And making a return for the first time this season is Michael's professor's jacket, as I call it, the tweed and suede, whatever. We saw this way back in season 1 in Chariot of Gold, and he also wore it in A Knight in Shining Armor. And there's probably another time or two, but here he is wearing it again. This might be the last time we see him wearing this jacket in the series. We've now arrived at the drive-in where the Marbury Grand Prix, the staging area of the Marbury Grand Prix was at this drive-in. This drive-in was also in Covina on Cypress Street. Unfortunately, it is no longer there. It would have been right here. Interestingly enough, though, this Manny's El Loco restaurant, this was a Manny's El Loco restaurant back then. So I think what happened was over the ensuing 3 decades after this was filmed, the same business tore all that down and put in maybe a traditional restaurant right here. And it actually looks like it's now closed as well. But the staging area would have been right in here. And then, you see them all come out onto the road and they go off in that direction to start the race. One of the cool things about this episode is kind of all of the custom cars that we see here. And I think maybe a couple of them came from George Barris, but I seem to recall reading that some of them came from like local car clubs or car enthusiasts in the area that they needed for background vehicles. And interestingly to note, this 1969 Plymouth Barracuda, a couple years ago, someone reached out to me, and if you're watching this, I apologize. I looked everywhere for our conversation history about this, but he actually owns this exact Barracuda that was used in this episode. And he sent pictures at the time, looks identical to the way it looks here in the episode. And if you're listening, contact us again. I'd love to get back in contact with you and talk more about the car. Maybe we can even do a whole video specifically on this Barracuda, because I think it's a really cool, neat piece of Knight Rider history. And then we move ahead and we have this, I think it's the 72 Pinto. But if you look inside, that's Jack Gill driving right there. And then we've got this blue custom job, probably a kit car. Wouldn't be surprised if this was a Barris creation. Any of you guys out there know any of the history behind this specific car? And just a small little continuity gap. We see this is, again, Jack Gill driving that Pinto, and he's heading off out of the drive-in and down the road. And then 2 seconds later, we see Red trying to open Kitt's hood, and what's in the background? That exact same Pinto. And I got to thinking about Red here and what he tries to do to Kitt here. First, he tries to pry open his hood, not realizing that's not going to damage the car. It very well could have if it was a regular Trans Am. And then later, he takes a battery-powered Sawzall or a mini circular saw and tries to cut open Kitt's hood. Think of that. If that would happen at a car show you were at and someone was trying to do that, they'd get arrested. Not Red, though. But here, whenever he breaks off he shoves the metal rod under Kitt's hood, bends it, and it breaks. And if you look closely, a piece of it stayed wedged under Kitt's hood there. We've got 7 different Trans Ams used in this episode. The roll cage acrylic window jump car, Season 3 hero car, the right-hand blind drive car, the hardtop stunt car, the kind of general purpose T-top stunt car. We've got the left-hand blind drive car, and we've got the Season 3 insert car. And now we see the Marbury Motel, the hub of all of the gangster activity in this episode. This is a Ramada Inn in Burbank. Let's take a look at it today. Well, look at that. It looks identical to how it did in 1984. That's where the limos were pulling up. Kitt pulls up here to rescue Michael. Kitt pulls over here, right in here. That's where his champagne music goes off when Michael's trying to sneak in. Pretty much identical to 1984. And another filming location on Jamie Downs' house. This is actually at Universal Studios in their back lot. This is along the same street where they had the house for like the Munsters and Bewitched and Leave It to Beaver. So this is what you see here is just an outside set. There's actually nothing. The inside it's fake. It's a facade. And it's been a while, but here's a blink and you'll miss it cameo of that yellow Volkswagen Rabbit. We haven't seen too much of it, but we're going to see it a few times in this episode. And once again, we've got the right-hand blind drive car being used for left-hand driving. Maybe it was the only car available or running at that time. We've got some issues with the tail lights here. What's missing, 1 bulb's out here, 2 are out here. And this episode was filmed before Junkyard Dog. So if you remember in my Junkyard Dog commentary, we talked about how the right-hand blind drive car received some significant damage to the front of it in that episode. And whenever it received that damage, it caused the fog light orientation to be changed. Well, we see Michael spin around, and if you look at the fog lights, you'll see they're back to their original Season 1 configuration, where even though there's only 2 lights on each side, there's still the space there for that third light that this cars had back in Season 1. And like I said, whenever this car is damaged in Junkyard Dog, they'll replace the impact bumper, and these 2 fog lights will be spaced out a little bit more. Hopefully you're not spaced out right now. Anyways, continuing. And for those of you who like insert shots of countdowns, I believe this is reused footage from the bomb that Pelly and Corso were going to use to blow up the dam in Lost Night. And mere seconds before Jamie's car blows up, she hasn't really had too much luck with cars in this episode, right? We see a mechanism under here, right? This is part of the mechanism that will explode the car. But if you look just seconds before it explodes, you can see that this will ignite, and then the inside ignites, and it's just a fireball. So now we're in the Season 3 insert car. And what's interesting about this angle is it's very rare we see not a close-up while this car is being used, right? They wanted to frame in both Jamie and Michael, and when they did that, they had to pull the cameras back a little. So whenever you see this car, you can see just how ill-fitting this overhead console really is. You know, it should actually cover this headliner material right here. And again, this is because this is the car that was originally designed to have a working T-top. And to do that, they had to bring the overhead console down to fit the mechanism inside of here to allow the T-top to open and close. But of course, by this point in the series, that mechanism no longer works, but we're still left with this ill-fitted overhead console here. Back in Season 2, the season was just overrun with these nondescript license plates that didn't say California across the top. We don't see them too much past Season 2, but here's a prime example of one of those nondescript license plates. And you know what? Take a look at this. This gives you an even better idea of where this original drive-in was located. So take a look at this house back here. See the eave right there, another one right here. That house is still there today. It's right here. So if we compare, so it looks like they're pulling in almost across the street from the driveway of this house. So there's the driveway. Yep, right where we said it was. Yep, 100%. Unfortunately, that drive-in hamburger joint is no longer around. Anyways, let's move on. And for those of you liking your yellow Volkswagen Rabbit fix, there it is again right there. I always found this shot kind of odd. This is the left-hand blind drive car. Almost looks like it's missing a fog light here, but I don't think it is. They're just kind of dirty. See, there's one there, and I think you see the outline there, but looking at it at a glance, it looks like KITT only has one fog light on each side. And KITT is kind of monitoring what's going on before zeroing in on Red and his mini circular saw. And this is actually footage that we saw earlier in the episode of Jack Gill driving that Pinto out of frame and onto the street. But they reused that footage here. And then we move forward and we see this guy, and he's wearing a barefoot hat. Why is that relevant? Well, Barefoot was the name of the monster truck that was in the Rotten Apples earlier in the season. So wondering if this guy might just be a Knight Rider crew member who worked on the Rotten Apples and was given this hat. I don't know. And then we move forward and we see a guy wearing a Rebels jacket. This is one of the jackets from one of the car clubs from Season 2's White Line Warriors, right? Wasn't Ron Prescott a member of the Rebels? That's that same jacket right there. Like this guy's plate here, One Easy Money. Clearly that's a real California plate. Maybe someone out there could trace that plate, see if you can find out if this Camaro, this Z28 is still out there. So this could just be a coincidence, maybe, maybe not. But do you see this Nissan in the background? Is that a Nissan or a Datsun? I always get confused back there then. It might be a Datsun. Anyways, Barris and his family drove one this exact year, this exact color. And we actually have pictures of behind the scenes of this episode showing that car on set. So I'm kind of wondering if that's actually Barris's personal Datsun or Nissan or whatever it is. I think it's a Datsun. Could be, maybe not. I don't know, but it could just be a coincidence. And this is one of my favorite times that Michael is rescued by KITT. KITT pulls up, Michael jumps in, and you see this huge puff of smoke come out of the exhaust. Just a really, really cool shot, and then he speeds off. So Michael is getting ready to race Red in the Red Rooster. A couple things here. Once again, there's that Rebels jacket, that same guy wearing the Rebels jacket. There were 2 Camaros used in the episode, and if you look closely, this one has a tow bar in the front, just like KITT used to have in season 2. And this was the car that was used for all the reaction shots on the inside. There was also a stunt car that did not have the tow bar underneath. And then we see Michael pressing the protect button, putting on the passive laser restraint. This was big. I remember reading an article that was dated in like the summer of 1984 that the passive laser restraint system was specifically added to KITT because of all the kids that watched the show thinking that they didn't have to wear a seatbelt in the car because there were laser seatbelts, or because there were no seatbelts because KITT didn't have seatbelts. So they introduced these imaginary laser seatbelts that, and you know, they make a point throughout the last 2 seasons to turn on the passive laser restraint system, and that's why it was a direct response to all of the kids watching the show, how popular the show had become, and wanting to make sure that kids were actually buckling up in their own cars. They didn't have the passive laser restraint button at this point in the series. That would come later, so they just used the protect button in this episode. So Michael and Rooster are getting flagged on by the race flag girl, whatever. We talked to her a number of years ago, and she actually shared a couple cool behind-the-scenes photos that I thought I'd share with you now. So here she is with Hasselhoff, obviously between takes. And here's another shot kind of behind the scenes. Looks like they're at the drive-in here. You can see the Pinto off to the side there. So Michael takes off. I always thought this was weird how he took off later than Rooster. I guess as part of his plan was to let Rooster take the lead there. But if you look in the far distance, there's actually a policeman here blocking traffic to close this road for filming. And that's what you see right there. Okay, so this whole sequence took place at a place called the Lang Ranch. Years after this was filmed, you know, clearly it's barren, there's nothing out here, but years after this was filmed, this entire area was developed. None of it looks like this anymore. There's houses and housing developments, and that's progress for you, I guess. So KITT detects the live electrical wire on the road, and then we cut to this shot of Michael, and this footage actually comes from much later in the episode, and you can tell because Hasselhoff's wearing a different shirt. He's wearing the shirt he wears during the climax of this episode, but in reality, during this scene, he's wearing that white and green kind of tracksuit. This one. So you can see from scene to scene, he changes. All right, and then we have this absolutely fantastic jump over the Camaro. Nice slow motion. We talked to both Jack and Andy Gill back in the day, or not back in the day. We talked to them 10 years ago about this shot back in the day. Here's what Jack had to say. That this was a jump that my brother Andy did. He was jumping over Mike Tillman, who is not with us anymore. Mike was in the red car with the big blower on it. This jump had to be timed precisely because the car had to land directly in front of the electric wire that was strung across the road, so we had to time it so Andy was jumping over Mike Tillman. I was directing second unit at the time, so we did some practice runs with Andy driving past the ramp and not hitting the ramp. Then we tried to figure out where he would actually land. He can't land on the wires. He had to land in front of them, and Andy can't land on Mike Tillman, so this was a tough spot. But it came out perfectly, and the timing was perfect. Andy landed in front of the wires, tripped them, and KITT took the brunt of the electricity and not the red car, which is what we wanted. And when we talked to Andy about it, he shared a similar story, but he also shared these behind-the-scenes shots of this jump, which is really, really cool. And these made it into our 2012 book, Knight Rider, 30 Years of a Lone Crusader in His Talking Car, which, if you're interested, you can find on Amazon. Link below. So there's the jump coming in. Hits. Look how the front end's buckled up. And notice how Andy's wearing a white and green jacket to match Hasselhoff. And then sparks go flying. And going back to the actual episode, you can see here, look how much that front end buckles whenever it lands. This is that roll-caged acrylic window jump. And then we cut to a different car. This is that manual transmission stunt car, the one that ended up in the pit in Junkyard Dog. And remember, again, we're back. We're back before Junkyard Dog was filmed, so this car is back in action. But once Junkyard Dog hits, this car is gutted, turned into the transforming Super Pursuit car, which we've talked a number of times in a number of videos. But here it lives again. And you get this great shot of the insert dash on the soundstage. This is the one that we currently own and are currently restoring, and we really need to get back to doing that. More updates on that soon. So Michael's back at the Marbury Hotel. This is what I was saying, but that same fence that you see behind it, the same wall is still there. But I just noticed Michael is kind of a jerk to park the way he parked KITT, right? He's completely perpendicular to the way the parking spot should be. But, oh well, guess you can do that when you're a crime fighter. Okay, now Michael is sneaking around the Marbury Motel and watching the security guard flirt with his lady. Is this the yellow Volkswagen Rabbit? I don't know. I could compare screenshots, but honestly, I'm getting tired talking about the yellow rabbit. So let's move on. In the background here, look how they put a piece of tape over the waste management number. I guess they didn't want to promote the garbage company in the area. Here you have Michael in the semi showing Devin the surprise in the suitcase. Pointing this out because some of you realize this, but there's an awesome blooper in the official blooper reel from this scene. So I figured let's take a look at the actual scene that aired and let's take a look at the blooper.
In the hands of the proper authorities, this information could drive a wedge into the Detroit family. In the hands of the proper authorities, this information could do all sorts of damage to the...
All right, so this guy you see on the far left, he might look familiar to you. His name is Alan Graff. He was brought in on occasion to do stunts in Knight Rider. And he has not really a prominent role in this episode, but if you watch the series finale Voodoo Night, and who doesn't love Voodoo Night, right? Just kidding. Anyways, he is one of the two muscles of Hernandez, the one that they put the earring on and he turns into this Incredible Hulk type of guy. But here he is in another role as Mr. C's bodyguard. All right, fine. One more time. There's the Yellow Rabbit. I feel like, we hadn't seen the Yellow Rabbit in a while. And I think that's, like I said before, it's a crew member's vehicle. And I bet you that they sold it or turned it in or whatever, traded it in somewhere in this season, because I'm pretty sure it just kind of disappears and we don't see it again. Okay, moving on. This is kind of a little bit of a neat thing. So as you guys probably know, the insert car, which we're looking at here, Hasselhoff actually isn't driving it. It's connected via the tow receiver to a camera truck, and the truck is pulling the car's in neutral. The truck is pulling the car so Hasselhoff can focus on acting and not driving. But look at the background, the reflection right here of the insert car. And by the way, this is a white and gold Camaro right here, this blur. But it's really, really hard to see, but you can kind of make out some of the lighting and camera apparatus on the hood of the car right here. That's what this is right here. Just kind of a neat blink and you'll miss it moment. So I've always wondered about this Red Rooster. Well, like I said, there were two of them. There was a stunt one and this one. I'm wondering if this was actually built for the show or if this was a car that was borrowed, maybe from Barris or from someone local, and then they built a replica of it for the stunts because it's featured so prominently. Any of you guys out there, especially any of you watching in Southern California, do you ever remember seeing this car around car shows or on the street? I'd love to find out what happened to the Red Rooster Camaro. So also in this scene, this is where KITT activates his micro pulse or whatever and fires up the Red Rooster and backs it off. And the close-ups that you see, the pedal and the dash, these are actually close-ups from Night of the Drones whenever you see the drone car automatically going into drive and hitting the gas pedal. So they just reuse that footage. This is not what the inside of a 83, 84 Camaro looks like. So this is pretty cool. All right, there's this scene. This is where Michael and KITT drive over the bomb and it explodes, right? And you see the aftermath here, and then you also see, before you see the aftermath, you see this insert shot. Clearly, the Hoff's inside all of this smoke. This is the hardtop stunt car. You can clearly see there's no T-tops here, even though they have a fake strip across the top. You can see that squared off overhead console that this car has had since season 1. And if we advance the screen, it's still the hardtop stunt car, and you can see the front end got a little dusty, I guess. But what you don't see here is we have the production notes from the shooting of this day, and it specifically calls out this scene and says that this car suffered undercarriage and paint damage due to proximity to explosion, meaning it was over top of the explosion. So I don't know what kind of undercarriage damage it did, but probably something decent that would need repaired. Oh, and one other thing I almost forgot to mention that these production notes state. You remember the scene we showed you a little bit ago in the semi? Well, as you know, that set was on a soundstage, stage 1 at Universal Studios. Well, the production notes for the day they filmed that said computer panel mock-up in semi damaged when it fell over during moving of set walls. So some of you probably know this, but in order to get the different angles inside of the semi set, the side walls would be removed and put back and removed and put back, and things would get moved around. And it sounds like on the day when they moved some of those set walls to set up the cameras, they actually accidentally knocked over one of the computer panels. So not sure which one it is. It wouldn't be the boomerang unit along the back wall, because I don't think that one's ever moved. But it would have been maybe the tall blinky light one. I don't know, but kind of just a neat little piece of trivia there. And for the final scene, we have another little continuity screw up. We have Hasselhoff holding a cup in his right hand, French fry in his left hand, and as he's talking, you can hear he has food in his mouth. And then the second it cuts to the close-up, his speech becomes clearer because he doesn't have food in his mouth, and he's no longer holding a fry. It looks like he's holding a burger, and there's the lettuce for it. And one last thing, so if we go back here, we can see that KITT is parked right behind them. But if you look in the background here, I'm pretty sure we've got another KITT car sitting right there behind the wall. And the final scene of the episode, we have the rematch between KITT and the Camaro. Obviously, KITT takes off and wins. Once again, we don't see this too often in the show, but look at all the spectators watching the filming of this scene. All these kids on bikes over here, and then when he takes off, if you look way down here, you can see once again the police have the road blocked off. Look at all the traffic back there that's being held up while they kept this stretch of road clear so they could film this scene. Alrighty, folks, we have completed the 19th hole. This was a pretty bright spot in Season 3. I always really enjoyed this episode. Next up, as we continue our quest to finish off Season 3, we have Knight and Nerd. And we're also getting super close to the introduction of our other screen-used Knight Rider car that we have. The one that you saw in Jay Leno has yet to appear in the series. But that's going to be changing very, very soon. So you're going to want to keep watching because it's pretty cool. As always, thanks so much for spending your time here. We know you've got all kinds of places you can go to for your Knight Rider entertainment, but we appreciate you choosing the Knight Rider Historians. Take care. We'll talk to you next time. Nope.